Good morning. Time to get started. We are going to be in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. We are about midway through that chapter. So, this section, I think, really helps us better understand what it means to be a Christian, what should motivate us as Christians, all those kinds of things. This whole area of 2 Corinthians, I think, is helpful with that, but especially here, I think we're really getting into some meat here with, all right, what is it that should drive me forward as a Christian? What is it that I should wake up in the morning focused on thinking about pushing me forward, pushing me to serve God today? So I think it's going to be a useful study. Let's go ahead and start with a prayer, and then we can get into it. Oh Lord God, you are loving, gracious, merciful. Oh God, thank you so much for your love that you showed to us on the cross. Thank you for Jesus suffering and dying for us, giving up everything so that we could be saved. Thank you for adopting us as your children and bringing us into that relationship with you. Thank you for recreating us all new, making us new and holy people. Thank you for the change that you have brought about in our lives. God, please help us to be driven to serve you each day. Please motivate us, strengthen us, help us through this study, Lord God. Amen. So throughout these last couple of chapters, Paul has been trying to defend himself, trying to explain who he is. And we saw that at the beginning of chapter 3. If you look over there in chapter 3, verse 1, he says, are we beginning to commend ourselves again, or do we need, as some do, letters of recommendation to you or from you? So are we beginning to commend ourselves to you? So are we beginning to have to tell you who we are? But then he spends the rest of the next couple of chapters trying to explain, here's who I am. And the reason is because there were false teachers who'd come in and were messing up Paul's reputation, and they were building up themselves, and now the Corinthians, they don't really have much respect for Paul anymore. And so Paul's not only defending himself, but in doing so, he's trying to explain this is what a true Christian should be like, and trying to show them these false teachers are not that. And so we've seen that in a couple of ways. In chapter 3, we saw that with that whole thing about Moses. He talks about Moses going up on the mountain and his face shining, and Paul's comparing that to that's what we are as Christians. We see God's glory and our faces begin to shine with that same light of Christ. And then in chapter 4, he talked about, he used the analogy of clay pots. We are like these clay pots that have a treasure inside. They're just jars of clay, but what's inside them is this beautiful treasure. And then he continued that in the beginning of chapter 5 by showing how this outer self that is decaying, you have the outer self decaying more and more, that's the clay pot. But then in the end, as the outer self is decaying and the inner self is being renewed, as that continues all the way to the very end until death, and then you have the real transformation as we are completely transformed and we shed these tents and take on this new permanent home. That's what we had at the beginning of chapter 5, where he said, chapter 5, verse 1. For we know that if the tent that is our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Okay, so where we got to last time was to verse 11. We're ready to start verse 11. So I want to read the last few verses of, we're going to read 6 through 10, and then see how that connects up to our new thing, and then we can jump into our study. Anne.
When Paul is talking about we commend ourselves.
Yeah.
Who is with what other preachers or who is traveling with him?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it's what the verse we're going to go to right now.
Right, yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so it's obviously not just Paul. Could be Titus. I mean, he has mentioned Titus quite a bit through here. So it could be him and Titus.
Well, he hadn't caught up to him at that one point. What we had just
Right.
read. He wasn't where he had gone to, where Paul had gone to, so he was looking for him.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if it's all the apostles. I mean, because we had at the beginning of 1 Corinthians, we had I am of Paul, we had Apollos, but then we also had Peter there, so he could be talking about Apollos or Peter. So yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, that's a good point that it's not just Paul. It's not really a thing just about his reputation. He's seeing that
himself. He's
yeah.
defending all of them. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
This isn't talking about Christians, just all Christians.
Well, okay, so that's the key thing here that we really need to keep in mind for the application to us. That as he defends himself, he's really explaining here's what a Christian should be. And so there's so much application for us because he's explaining like the whole light of Moses' face shining, that analogy. That's us as Christians. That's all of us. That's not just Paul. That's not just apostles. That's all of us. Or the clay pot with the treasure in it. That's all Christians. We should all be that. And the analogies he's going to use today, very much the same way. This is what we should be as Christians. Okay, any more thoughts before we jump into this text?
Timothy's with us.
Oh, okay.
The first one of the books, the letter Timothy's with us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good point. Okay, cool. All right, yeah, so Timothy's probably included in the we. That makes sense. All right, let's read verse 6 of chapter 5. So we are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. Yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. Okay, so that last verse that we just read, verse 10, that's where John ended on the class on Wednesday. In that verse, what is motivating Paul?
His reward.
His reward, yeah. He's looking all the way to Judgment Day, and he's saying, we're going to receive, how does he say it, what's due, or what is due for what has been done in the body.
Modern day religious people dodge this verse because it implies one judgment, where many religious groups have more than one judgment.
Okay, yeah. This shows how simple God's design actually is. Yeah.
The good and the bad are going to stand at this one judgment.
Yeah. All right, so you have this Judgment Day, and Paul's looking to that Judgment Day, and it's motivating him. It's motivating him to live for Christ. But now, as we get into chapter 11, it's going to be motivating him towards something else as well. So, let me go ahead and write up, we've got the context here is Judgment Day. Judgment Day is motivating him, and it's also, let's read verse 11. Therefore, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade others. But what we are is known to God, and I hope it is known also to your conscience. Okay, so the beginning of that verse, what else is the judgment day motivating him toward? Persuading others. So what does that mean?
Work,
What's that?
he's got work to do.
Work to do. What describe it. Like,
Like,
yeah, this is the sharing the gospel. That as he looks to Judgment Day, it motivates him to share the gospel with others.
Well, Paul Penn made the point earlier in the chapter that when you hold the line of glory of the gospel of Jesus, then you have to tell them.
Yes.
So this is what he's doing. This is what he's trying to get all of us to do.
Yeah. When Paul envisions that day when we all stand before God's throne and everyone's going to either receive eternal reward or eternal punishment, what that does for him is, I got to go out and tell people, quick. I've got to go share that with everybody around me. This is important. And the way he describes it is knowing the fear of the Lord, knowing God's justice, that motivates me to want to go share with other people. It needs to. That needs to be pushing us to do that. When we think about there are eternal consequences for this life, what am I doing about that? Does that make me want to go out and talk to people? When I see someone, know someone, and know that they may not be going the right place, does that motivate me to want to do something about that? All right, any other thoughts on that concept? Okay, well now he's back in the rest of that verse, he's back to talking about who he is. But what we are is known to God, and I hope it is known also to your conscience. Okay, so this really gets us into what we want to talk about throughout the rest of this study. Who are we? Who are we? And he says, God knows. Whoever Paul is, God knows. And he hopes they know. So whoever he is, whether he's following Christ or whether he's not, whatever kind of character he has, one thing is clear, God knows it. But he hopes the Corinthians know it as well. Yes.
When he uses the word conscience, it makes it even more, instead of hopes they know, but that their consciences are pricked
Yeah.
by this very thought that he just explained to them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be
Yeah.
right and wrong. Conscience, your conscience is, some people say your guide,
Yeah.
but yeah, you have to, it's really a big choice.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So, yes, Neil.
Some of the translations, instead of know there, it says make manifest.
Oh, okay.
And know is sort of a nebulous term, whereas made manifest is to know everything about. You know,
Yeah.
a manifest with a bill of sale it's the details of what goes on in the trade.
Yeah.
And that's a little more descriptive than just knowing somebody or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You wouldn't think this would be this hard. You would think that the Corinthians could look at Paul. He's a man who's so motivated to follow Christ. They could look at Paul and say, he is a good man. It seems strange that he's having to give so much explanation to say, look, I really am a good person here. I really am on Christ's side. Why do you think that is? Why is it so hard for...
Well, they also understand his past. So he's still trying to get them to understand this is not me. This is who I am now. God, it's because of Jesus or because of God, this is how I am what I am. You can be that way too. I mean, it's not a double life he's leading.
Right, yeah.
It's only one life because he's explaining that God knows me inside and out. So I can't live a double life that I'm not living.
That is a good point. I think that is a big application we get from this part. That Paul is not trying to live a life that's all on the outside.
Right.
He is not trying to live a life that's just performance for everyone else. His real goal is to please God. He hopes other people will respect him as well, but really, what he's really concerned about is, what does God think?
He's also making that statement that because he is following God now, he's actually, in what we become when we become baptized, he is a new creation. You're not the old.
Yes.
So now you're to behave as a new creation. And what is that new creation? What God instructs you to be.
That's going to be the lesson this morning. That's where he's going to get us to. The last verse we're going to do is where he finally comes out and says, I'm a new creation. But he's going to build us up to that point of explaining this is what a Christian is.
It's been a while since he was at Corinth. Lots happened since then, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're surrounded by idolatry. They came out of idolatry. They have these false apostles come in there and try to manipulate them. So there's a lot's happening since he was with him. He's got to kind of, reintroduce himself to him. Remember me? Yeah, I was the guy that taught you the gospel. So, we have to look at the times that they were in,
Right.
the environment they were in, and things like that, and he has to address that.
Yes, Neil.
Back in the 7th verse, I think he says, I walk by faith, not by sight. And that sort of hinted at the explanation of his life. To follow someone or to observe someone, you can see when they're walking by sight. You can figure that out. But when they're walking by faith, you don't know what that is.
Yes.
It's intangible, whatever they're following.
Right, yes.
Like Abraham, his obedience was counted as righteousness, or his faith was.
Yes.
And this is the same thing that Paul is hinting at here for his believers there.
I think you're right, and I think we're going to see that more as we go through this text. Really, God is seeing the inside. Others are seeing the outside. And that's what we're going to be seeing that throughout this text, is this contrast between the inside and the outside. And as we live focused on the inside, it's going to change who we are on the outside as well. But if people don't really understand what the Christian life is about, then people can misunderstand the outside. I think we're gonna see that as we go through here. Yes, Mary.
Oh, no, I was just scratching.
Okay, oh, you're good.
The people he's dealing with, they come out of idolatry and all kinds of false religions, and their life was by sight. So
Yeah.
introducing them to this life by faith is a new experience for them.
Yes. All right, well, let's go a few more verses, and this is going to start to make even more sense. Verse 12. We are not commending ourselves to you again, but giving you cause to boast about us, so that you may be able to answer those who boast about outward appearance and not about what is in the heart. This is neat. This is where he explains this is why we are doing this. So he says we are not. What is he not doing?
Committing themselves.
Committing themselves. So they're not saying, hey, look at me. Now I'm glad he's explaining that, because we might try to read this and be like, well, Paul, you really had to spend 3 chapters of the Bible just talking about you? How selfish are you? But that's not the point. He's not trying to make this about him. He says we're not trying to build ourselves up, basically, but what is the goal?
They are not talking about themselves. They are showing them themselves. They are shining their lights out to these people so they can boast on them and not doing it themselves.
Yeah, so here's what this shows us. We've got Paul here. We've got the Corinthians here. and we've got these other teachers. Now, Paul is concerned about how the Corinthians see him. But it's not for the reason we might think it is. The reason we might think is the same reason that most of us would be concerned about what people think about us. Because if someone doesn't like you, then that's not very pleasant. We like to have people like us. But that's not what Paul's getting at here. He's concerned about how the Corinthians see him because, and let's look at this verse, so that you may be able to answer those who boast about outward appearance and not about what is in the heart. That's these other people, these outward appearance people. That if the Corinthians see who Paul is, then they're going to be able to answer these people.
Expose.
Yes, yeah, I think that's ultimately what it'll be, is it'll be exposing them. But these people over here on the right, these people, what is the characteristic of them according to the text? What does it say there?
Their appearance is physical appearance.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, sir.
The outward appearance. These people they only value the outward appearance,
And not what they're hiding in their hearts.
not the heart.
Yeah, they have it really upside down. They would think that because he's not going around bragging about who he is and that he's not sincere. That's what the point Paul's trying to make. We
Yes.
don't have to be this way to be who we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
He's trying to get the Corinthian church to understand that.
That's it, yes. So here, these new people have come into the church there, and for them, it's all about the outward appearance. It's all about the show and the just make people see us. And maybe it was about money, because we talked about how they talked earlier about them peddling the gospel. So maybe it was about getting people's money, in which case these are probably people who are quite wealthy, who come in and impress everybody with their wealth. That might have been that kind of a thing. It might have been their great speech. We're going to see that later on in 2 Corinthians. So it might have been their great public speakers. Whatever it was, they were impressive people on the outside. And now Paul's trying to say, because Paul's none of that. And so Paul's trying to say, look, I want to explain to you the way I serve Christ, but not so that you'll see me. Not so you'll be like, oh, Paul, you're such a great person. It's not that at all. It's so that you'll see that those things like money and public speaking and all those things that you value, power or whatever it is, those things don't matter. That you'll see something on the inside. You'll start to see as God sees it. And then you'll be able to go to all these other people. You'll be able to say to them, guys, you got it wrong. Why would we listen to you? All you have is the outside. You're an empty shell. That's where Paul's trying to get the Corinthians to.
Phil, sometimes we give people languages or words to use. He's giving them a reason that if you confront these, here's how you answer them. He's giving them language. He's giving them an opportunity. So here, how do I talk to these people? Well, compare them with me. And here's some language. Here's how you approach them.
Yeah.
You compare them with me, and you can see the truth about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. John.
If you think about Christ, where was Christ? Where would you put him? With the outward appearance? No. It's not.
Right.
What we know, it wasn't anything outward appearance wise, right?
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
all like Paul. It's more like what Paul is, the inner person, is the heart.
Yes.
It's the spiritualness, not the
Mhm.
physical appearance.
That's
So
it.
he's basically describing Christ.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, and
It was what Jesus said about the Pharisees.
yes.
Always on the outside for the show, to
Yeah.
make everybody think that they were righteous and holy.
Mhm.
They're hypocrites.
Yeah.
He's called that many times.
Right, yeah. Okay, the next verse is confusing. So we're going to have to try to think through that. So it's verse 13. For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God. If we are in our right mind, it is for you. Okay, so we've got beside ourselves. Does anyone have a different translation on beside ourselves? Yes.
If we are out of our mind,
Out of our mind. Okay. So let me write. I'll just write it down right here. We've got out of our mind or beside ourselves. That's for God. And then we've got if we are in our right mind. How was it? Right mind. Yeah. Right mind. For you. Okay.
The New American Standard says sound mind.
Sound mind. So right mind or sound mind. Okay. So
He calls himself, let me be a little foolish in one place.
that's going to be later in 2 Corinthians. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so he says, maybe I'm looked on as foolish, but it's what you're saying.
Yes. So he's saying if we're crazy for God. If we're not crazy, if we're doing this, if we're sane here, that we're doing it for you. What do y'all make from that?
Well, the kind of devotion and sacrifice that God calls us to do will cause your everyday normal people in the world to consider us out of our minds.
Yes.
So if we believed and acted like they did, then they think we were okay. We have to be different.
Yeah.
We're set apart. That's what the whole thing is.
Yes. I think that is where Paul's getting to in 2 Corinthians, is that the Christian life, if it's really practiced the way it's meant to be practiced, if we truly lived like Christ, people would think we're crazy. And Paul's going to get deeper and deeper into that in the next few chapters. He talks about the suffering that he went through and all of the persecution that he endured and everything, that anyone else would have thought, Paul, you're crazy. Just quit it. Why would you go through all that? So I think he is trying to show them that, yes, my life may look crazy. And to these other people who've come into the church there who don't live Christianity out like that at all, yeah, I'm sure I look pretty crazy right now. But if I'm crazy, I just want you to know it's because I'm doing it for God. That's why I look crazy, is because it's not about me, it's about God. Mary, sorry.
I think that also too, this shows the correlation between the relationships, because if you have a relationship with somebody, somebody's going to see it as, that's what it's for. But somebody that you don't have a relationship with could see it as being crazy.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Neil?
Paul is gently preparing them for more strong language in the 10th and 11th and 12th chapters about dealing with these false teachers.
Yes.
And he's more gentle here in this chapter.
You're right. It is interesting how this book builds and builds and builds and builds. That even though we're already pretty intense right now, by the time we get to the end, there's a whole lot more power in his statements.
To me, the out of the mind for God is, how many times have you talked to someone and you can see it, you can see the truth, but it's just not getting into their brains or something, and you just want to take and shake them and say, it's right there, why can't you read it?
Yeah.
And you feel that way for God because you want everybody to be saved.
Yeah.
They just aren't seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I think we've hit that from a few different angles of this. It may look crazy because of we're doing it for God. But at the same time, and I think this is where it gets confusing, at the same time, I think he wants them to see, for them, he wants them to see that he's in his right mind. For them, he wants them to see this isn't crazy. This is, I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it to help you. What the other part that I think is interesting is we've got it for God and we've got it for them. We don't have it for Paul. None of the two things that motivate him are God and others. Himself is not on the list here. There's not a third one. And I think that's going to become even more clear as we go through this text. What motivates Paul? God, others. That's it. That's why his life looks a little crazy.
Well, Paul had been asked in a few places, why are you continuing to undergo all this deep persecution, this jailing and all this other stuff? Paul saw the bigger picture. They're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So we keep trying to explain him all these things that he's been through, that he knows, that he's seen. This is all for God. I understand where I'm going to be at when God sends the Son again.
Yeah.
That's where I want you to be at too.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of the sacrifices, of the persecutions, because this is not the end of it.
Yeah.
We need to get past this and realize what waits for us. That's the bigger prize.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hit the next verse, verse 14. For the love of Christ controls us, because we have concluded this, that one has died for all, therefore all have died. And he died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. I love these verses. You may remember a few years ago I preached a whole sermon just on those two verses right there, because I think they describe the Christian life. I really do. So let's work through them phrase by phrase. The love of Christ controls us. That is a huge statement. What controls the Christian? The love of Christ. What motivates the Christian? It's Jesus' love. That's what's driving Paul. That's what's driving us, is Jesus' love. That's the deciding factor. That's the thing that motivates us every morning, that pushes us to continue to do what we do. It's seeing Christ's love. It's the reason that taking the Lord's Supper each week is so crucial for us, to continue to see his love over and over and over again. Have that driving force motivating us over and over. Okay, but then he explains it more. The love of Christ controls us. For we have concluded this: one died for all. But then the next statement is where it starts to get confusing. This one makes sense. He sees Jesus as love. He sees, let's just think about this. One died. Jesus died. Jesus, the one who created us, the one who was there with the Father in the beginning, bringing all of this into being, the one who is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-supreme, majestic there in heaven, the one who has millions and millions of angels praising him, and yet he's the one who's suffering there on the cross, bleeding and dying. That's what Paul's seeing. I think about Paul on the Damascus Road. So many of these things in these chapters here in this section take us back to Paul on the Damascus Road. Here he is. He thinks Jesus is just this person that caused a lot of trouble, and then the Romans killed him, and then there's these crazy people who follow him and everything. He thinks that whole thing is just something that needs to be ridiculed and pushed out and everything. And then he realizes that's God. That man on the cross, that's God. And it changes everything. The one who created him is the one who's suffering and bleeding and dying for him. And he understands love like he hadn't seen it before. And from that point forward, the love of Christ controls him. So now let's try to think through the next phrase of that.
Before you leave that,
Yeah.
the love of Christ, don't you want to have that one way, or does Christ's love for me control me, or does my love for Christ control me?
Well, we love him because
wow.
Well,
Can you
we love-
separate them?
Yeah. I see
We
what
love
you
him
mean.
because he first loved us.
Right, yeah. The love of Christ. Yeah, so is it Jesus' love for me or my love for him?
It has to be our love for him, because he doesn't control us. He gives us free will. So it has to be our love for him is what makes us do what we do.
Yeah, so it is this, his love for me is so powerful that it motivates me to love him to the point that I just can't possibly do anything else. Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that was probably written that way on purpose. Paul did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so his love of Christ controls us. One died for all. Okay, now he says, therefore all have died.
In order to have the true reception of the gospel in our hearts, we have to die to ourselves.
That's
It's
it.
not us anymore.
That's
Everything we do is for Christ.
that's the
Because
explanation.
he died for us.
Yes.
And we die in our sins, right? Our sins are separated from God.
Yes. So John, I'm glad you brought that up because that's where this is so confusing. If wait, we die? How do we die? I thought Jesus died. But that's what Paul's getting at. He sees true sacrifice. He sees Jesus bleeding there on the cross. And what it motivates him to do is follow that. That he gives up himself when he sees Jesus giving up himself. And that's, therefore, all have died. All of us, as we follow Christ, we enter into that death.
See, that was another big purpose of that is Jesus died physically on the cross. Everything then after that is turned spiritual. So we're dying spiritually,
Yeah.
putting away all the physical things that keep us from God.
Yeah. And
Paul tells Timothy something similar to that in 2 Timothy 2, starting in verse 10. Therefore I endure everything for the sake of the elect, that they may also obtain the salvation that is in Christ Jesus with eternal glory. The saying is trustworthy, for if we have died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful.
if we die with him, we will live with him. Absolutely. That's the Christian life. The Christian life is this death. Okay, so, verse 15. And he died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves. Now he's clarifying it. Okay, he died for all, that those who live no longer live for self. Died to self. No longer self. Those who live, we're still living. We're still walking around. Our lives are just transformed. We're just different now. And this is where he wants the Corinthians to see who he really is, and see why his life looks crazy now. The reason his life looks so different from these outward appearance people is because his life is not about him. We die to self. Then he says, verse 15, and he who died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. But now they're going to live, but for him who for them died and was raised. So, instead of living for themselves, now they're living for Jesus. Because Jesus died for them. So, basically the Christian life is, he died for me, therefore I die for him. And the reason I died for him is because he died for me. That's what Paul's saying. He says it and then he says it again.
I think that another important word was the raised, meaning a new life. And this
Yes.
is what we are
Yes.
hoping for and living for, is that part.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't end with the death. It's through that death that we are raised. Absolutely.
And then Paul in Romans said, consider yourself dead to sin. So this explains the death here too. It's the same.
This is Romans 6. Yes. I mean, it's so similar. Joe?
Yeah, I was gonna say Romans 6, verse 3, when we die in baptism,
Yes.
the first two lines up there, the love of Christ controls us. One died for all, and then therefore all have died. Well, you can't live for Christ if you haven't been baptized to, into his death. So we all die that are going to live for him.
That's it. Baptism is a picture of exactly this. Yeah, it all starts with baptism, and then we continue to live that out each day. That's a picture of our death, and then it continues in that. All right, we've got to hit these last few verses. Let's do verse 16. From now on, therefore, we regard no one according to the flesh. Even though we once regarded Christ according to the flesh, we regard him thus no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. So now he says, we don't see people according to the flesh. That's this. Don't see this anymore. This one.
And we don't need to look at people in a worldly aspect anymore. Because we have to change our perception.
We
Because
do.
how does Christ, how does God see the world and the people? That's how we have to.
That's it.
We're more
We have to
concerned with
see
their
it.
souls than
Yes.
anything else they do.
That's right. So this not only changes the way we live, but it also changes the way we perceive others. And that's so critical. Ben?
This is extremely hard right now too, given the climate of everything. Like everything's left, right, black, white,
Yes.
identified by race and politics.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people's identities are based around, those things. And it's hard to take ourselves away from that because that's all that surrounds us. It's all that we hear. And it's hard to change our perspective. I do it. And it's even harder to get other people to see that as well too.
It's really tough. Yeah. Yes, it's not about the flesh. It's not about the external. What really matters is who are we as Christians? That's what he's getting at. And so, as he describes that, as he talks about this, he says, we used to see Jesus that way. We used to perceive him according to the flesh. Now, if you perceive Jesus according to the flesh, you'd have no interest in him at all. Or you'd be like Paul, you'd be persecuting him. That's seeing according to the flesh. Paul was there. He used to see people according to the flesh. And according to the flesh, no, you have no interest in Jesus. But now, he not only sees Jesus differently, he sees everyone differently. And then he says, verse 17, ties it all together. We are a new creation. There's this transformation. We have changed. New creation. If we stay the same, if we become a Christian and continue to think according to the flesh, continue to think in those old ways, something's messed up. Somehow we miss the whole thing. But instead, we are transformed. We're new.
When I say the word dead or die, I automatically think of separation. When we die to Christ, we separate ourselves from the sins of the world. We separate ourselves from participating in what they participate in. So we have died to that.
Yeah.
Paul adds a qualifying statement too between the love of Christ controls us and one died. And it's those who have concluded. So the perspective of not seeing those physical things and the worldly things is a requirement of being controlled by love, Christ's love, and believing the things below it too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.